Jim Sillars, it's an extremely interesting read. Let's go right the way back to the beginning. Tell me a little about your background and your childhood.
Well, I was born up close in White Street in Ayr, and then we moved to Seaforth Crescent. It's one of those 4 in a block, up and down, living room, bedroom, bathroom, kitchenette, really, basically. My old man, when I was born, was a railway fireman, and then he became a railway driver in due course. We weren't well off, but we weren't poor. The railwaymen were better paid than most people. The only problem we had was that the old man tended to be a gambler. I mean, he liked the bookies and the horses.
It's a different time. It's a radically different kind of Scotland. So paint a picture of the Ayrshire of your youth.
Well, first of all, there were no motor cars in our area. You know, we were the working class area. Coal was delivered by a horse and cart, and so was the milk delivered by a horse and cart. In fact, I was a milk boy. I started my working life at the age of 11. And I wasn't driven out to work. I was absolutely delighted to get a job as a milk boy.
In 1945, when the war ended and there was that landslide for the Attlee government, was there a sense that communities, working class communities in Ayrshire, when they saw this happening, they thought, the new Jerusalem is just around the corner?
I remember it as if it was, right now. I was in the kitchen and, the wireless, as we called it, was on with my old man. And over it came that Labour had won the general election. And across the road from us was a mining family, Mr. Logan. And my father rushed down the stairs, and Mrs. Logan had rushed. I always remember them dancing up and down in joy. Here was a Labour government, and what drummed into my mind was a Labour government. The word Labour government. It's on our side for the first time ever.
When did you become a Labour organiser, and why did you want to organise for Labour?
When I came out the Navy, I joined the Labour Party immediately. I only joined the Labour Party to give out leaflets, because that's what folk did, at my level in those particular days. The reason I prefer the trade union movement is that you can get things done. Very often you can spend your whole life in politics, and very difficult to say, what have I actually achieved? Sowing ideas is very important in politics, but you can never be sure that the ideas will achieve anything. Trade union was different. I was like a duck to water with the trade union movement.
Jump to the man, number 10, independence.
There was that seminal moment in November of 1967 when Winnie Ewing won the Hamilton by-election. Stop the world, we want to get on, she said. You at that time were regarded as a hammer of the Nats.
Well, I was a product of the British Labour movement. My heroes on the political side were Nye Bevan, Stafford Cripps, Clement Attlee, Herbert Morrison. I thought in the British context, wherever I could challenge the SNP to a debate, I did so. And of course, the fact of the matter is that the SNP were not ready to argue a case for independence at that time.
That we haven't taken part in the building of the British trade union and labour movement for over 260 years to see all its efforts dashed on the rocks of separatism. We will not go along that particular line.
I went to London, to Westminster as a unionist. But after 2 years in the House of Commons, I began to realise that the union that I had believed in all my adult life actually wasn't the same union. I began to realise that the UK is a fiction, that it is in fact the English state with Scottish and Welsh appendages and a bit of Northern Ireland coming in as well, and that English state interests were the dominant feature of policy making.
Just in the doorway, Mr. Wilson.
Wilson has a strategy for the October 74 election. The government come in, they're committed to a limited form of devolution in the form of a Scottish Assembly. The debate, I suppose, at that time was the extent to which this Assembly was going to have any economic powers or none. We then get to the White Paper, and then you have a real problem at this point.
And was stunned at how awful it was. We then had a rush of blood to the head.
If we have a genuine Scottish Labour Party of our own...
You and the Paisley MP, John Robertson, set up the Scottish Labour Party.
We were accused of having planned the breakaway with the SLP. The real crime against us is that we planned nothing whatsoever. It was just a Scottish rush of blood to the head. We were so angry, out we went. And years later now I can reflect, perhaps it'd been better had we stayed in and used the power base that we had, because I had a power base in the trade union movement, to get amendments to make it a better organisation. But, you know, the die was cast.
Was the Scottish Labour Party simply an idea that was ahead of its time?
Our problem was that we were so offensive to Labour. You know, we broke away from Labour, which is the heinous crime. You know, I'm a traitor, or I was then, regarded, and the term was used as a traitor to the Labour movement. And so there was no possibility of having an adult conversation about the SLP having an organic relationship with the British Labour Party.
Given what you've said about your background, you must have emotionally almost regarded yourself as a prisoner of the Labour movement, because you were imbued with it. So how difficult was it to put all of that aside and to leave?
Not intellectual agony, because I thought intellectually I was right, but I was in emotional agony. And in fact, Willie Ross said it, there's a special place in hell for folk like me, he said. And it was absolutely correct. I was in hell for a very long time. And it got so bad, you know, I developed an ulcer and I was vomiting blood into the snow and just in a dreadful emotional state, yet I couldn't show it. Because no way could I possibly show the hurt that I had placed on myself.
And after 1979, you decide to take a leap of faith and to do something which probably a decade earlier you would have suggested to anyone who would have put this proposition to you that they were mad. You joined the SNP.
Yep. I could not have joined the SNP that was before 1979. But what enabled me to join the SNP with a reasonably clear conscience was the creation of the 79 group. Now, the 79 group was a declaration by people like Margo MacDonald and Stephen Maxwell and Rosanna Cunningham and Chris Cunningham that, in fact, class mattered in the Scottish independence debate, and socialism was an acceptable methodology for a new country. And that allowed me to join.
Our people are in pain at the present time, and we need fuel in that tank of the party in order for us to campaign to free them from that pain.
After joining the SNP, he threw himself into key campaigns, culminating in his anti-poll tax candidacy at Govan in 1988, capturing for the SNP a safe Labour seat.
Jim Sillars, Scottish National Party, no poll tax, 14,000.
What was the legacy of Govan 88?
I think it made voting for, among working class people in the Central Belt in particular, it made voting for the SNP a legitimate action by working class people.
The Labour Party have been telling people that the Scots can have their cake and eat it. But what they're actually offering is stale bread wrapped in a deceptive package.
I think you do take the view that the 92 general election campaign was a proper campaign for independence.
Yes, we were unambiguous in 92. More or less said, you vote for us, you're voting for independence. Not for anything else, you're voting for independence, so we'll put you right bang on the spot. You really got to make up your mind Are you for or against independence? Now think about it, then make up your mind.
The great problem we have is that we'll sing Flower of Scotland at Hampden and Murrayfield, and that we've got too many 90-minute patriots in this country.
When you lost in 1992, you gave an interview to STV. A rather famous phrase emerged from that interview.
When it actually came to the decision on the country, as distinct from 11 folk kicking a football tube around a park, then they didn't make it. It's as simple as that. They didn't make it. And so I don't apologise for that statement whatsoever.
I want us to fast forward to the 2014 referendum. There was a great sense of energy about it.
I did 90 public meetings, and on the Margo mobile, about 12 speeches per day off the mobile. And I was convinced we're going to do it. The only thing that worried me was Gordon Brown, because I saw Gordon on the television singing the old-time religion about the Labour movement and it being all British. Now, coming from where I am, I understood perfectly well, the pull that would have.
How do you view Salmon's contribution, and how do you view Salmon the man, Salmon the personality?
Alec as a party leader was superb. Alec could knock the opposition and all the rest of it. He was good at that. But during the 2014 referendum, time after time after time, we picked up people saying to us quite openly, I don't like Alec Salmond. Alec's great ability as a political leader to hammer the other side actually prevented him being a national leader. I think he's one of the national tragedies in Scotland, that we had somebody with that ability that just didn't make the extra, that would really have mattered and would probably have carried us over in 2014.
The approval ratings for Nicola Sturgeon are so consistently high, higher than the approval ratings that Alex Salmond ever enjoyed. Should we read into that Nicola Sturgeon is either a more popular politician, is she a more skilled politician than Alex Salmond?
She's got a less abrasive personality than Alec had sometimes, but I see her government as a Potemkin government, which is a lot of facade, but nothing, no substance behind it.
I want to end the interview with what I suspect's the most difficult area for you, and that is to talk about Margo. We can't possibly go through a book about your life without mentioning Margo.
I described us as two halves of one whole. We were the same but different. I'm not the same without her. We sparked off each other. And I had an incredible admiration for her. Outside of loving her, I had an incredible admiration for her. People have no idea the pain that Margo was in permanently. She had a very high threshold of pain. In fact, her doctor, when she died, said to me, incredible woman. She had things wrong with her that would have failed anybody else, and yet she performed at the highest level.
I now call Margo MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer.
When she stood on her feet in the Parliament, you wouldn't have known. I think one of the tragedies of Margo, if Margo's health had been better, she would have been even a bigger force in the last years of her life.
Very often when people lose somebody that they love, particularly if they've been with them for a long time, I've heard people say, I still talk to them. I still talk to them. What do you think Margo would be saying to you about the current political situation in Scotland?
Well, actually, Margo actually didn't rate Nicola Sturgeon, believe it or not. And so would likely be saying to me just now, I told you so.
Jim Sillars, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.